John Osborne is either the founder or managing partner for several organizations here in Charleston. Today, I talk one-on-one with John for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. John Osborne, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, I appreciate it greatly. The Charleston Regional Business Journal says this about you, quote, John Osborne is passionate about entrepreneurship, which is exhibited by his roles as an executive administrator of the Charleston Angel Partners, director and co-founder of the Harbor Entrepreneurial Center, managing partner of Good Growth Capital, When Do You Sleep, founder of Charleston Angel Conference, and the founder of the CEO of Funding Charleston. John, let me ask you this. Which one of these careers describes you best right now?
I'd say the majority of my time right now is spent on Good Growth Capital, and that's where a lot of my focus is. Charleston Angel Partners is a close second, and then the Harbor I'm still extremely passionate about, and something that probably still most known for, given that's been around for the last 7.5 years now, and had a decent impact on the scene.
You talk about on the scene, you talk about 7 years. What is the biggest difference with that? The Harbor Entrepreneurial Center.
Well, it's the difference. The biggest difference is really the overall community ecosystem in general. And the Harbor plays a part and has played a part in helping move the needle there. But it's, I'd say the difference that I see materially 10 years ago when I was having conversations with entrepreneurs about starting to raise capital or have investors in there, so many of the basic 101 terms were not being talked about that now are generally understood in the market. And so just the acumen level, the understanding, the experience level of a larger number of people in our community that are thinking about starting companies or investing in companies and know how to do it. We're getting better as a community overall, and part of that attributes to the Harbor's connections of people who have been there before and done it, and that knowledge share that's been occurring for the last 7 years.
7 years. What exactly is understood about the market right now?
I think it's just more understood about how to identify a problem that needs to be solved, how to build technology that can solve it, how to put a cap table together and actually, take other people's money, how to set up your business, what partnership deals should look like, what co-founder operating agreements should be, things that people have learned the hard way. Those hard lessons are being transferred, and that's why I say the knowledge share into the next person that's aspiring or the next deal that someone does, and they've learned from their prior deal, and now they've started a new one and they're that much better for it. There are a handful of examples even of companies that have gone through the Harbor Accelerator program that shut down, which is to be expected. The math is what it is on startups, but that founder was able to take all the lessons learned, the network, the knowledge, start the next company, and then see a much greater success rate with that next thing that they did because of that knowledge and experience that they had from the prior one. So it all seems to just be building on each other, which is great.
And what are those hard lessons that you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Oh man, I was sharing with someone, I had a meeting 2 days ago with someone who is starting a company similar to the crowdfunding platform that I started Funding Charleston in 2012, which was 8.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And my hard lesson there was market timing. Like he said, crowdfunding 8 years ago, people looked at me like I had 3 heads. And today, people, if you say crowdfunding, there's a general awareness of it, but probably the majority still haven't actually invested in a deal through a crowdfunding platform. So even though through the Reg CF and the Title III you can put $100 into a startup on one of those platforms, even as a non-accredited investor, people aren't doing it. So I think market timing for me has been a huge lesson, like giving the market something that it is craving versus trying to put something on the market that you think is a good idea, but the market just isn't ready to adopt yet.
What is the market timing now in the era of COVID?
It's different for different companies. You know, I'll point to an example of a company that we have in our good growth portfolio that is called a Luna, and they have a remote respiratory monitoring device that was initially designed for children's asthmatic patients. They were in a pilot right when COVID hit. You can imagine remote monitoring of respiratory data all of a sudden became really important in the market and something the market was craving a lot. So they sold out of their inventory initially. We invested more money so that they could get more inventory. They got a compassionate use FDA clearance and now are just rolling. And so the market is craving that particular thing right now. But if you're running a restaurant, you know, you might be having a more challenging time in the era of COVID. So shifting market dynamics, if you want to call era of COVID that, does create opportunity for some, and for others it, you know, becomes a more challenging market. So I tend to try and be more optimistic and say the era of COVID, you know, is teaching us all personal and business lessons, as well as creating new opportunities for some that weren't there before.
And, and John, let me talk to you about the market dynamics. What are those looking like right now?
Yeah, the market dynamics I refer to are, you know, new regulatory environment for retail operations. You know, restaurants have to behave differently than they did a year ago. But at the same time, you know, we're talking on Zoom, and how many Zoom meetings did you have in 2019?
Right.
Right. So, you know, the people are starting to behave a little differently, forcing to behave a little differently. And, you know, so just those shifts create, you know, Zoom's got a great opportunity, you know, because of that dynamic where now people are meeting virtually versus in person. You know, a lot of the telehealth platforms that, you know, we saw that from a just sort of overall investment thesis, a lot of that being created over the last, you know, 5-6 years. There's been a bunch, but not a bunch of them have been more readily adopted. Now you're seeing a lot more of them be adopted. I mean, we're seeing a lot more virtual health screenings, etc. And that technology had been being built, but now the area of COVID makes the dynamics such that those are more in demand and going to be put into commercial use and not just a nice extra little benefit.
And what is your thesis when it comes to entrepreneurship and technology these days?
You know, I think I live in the world of it, so I am seeing just as much activity as ever. I get decks every week of, you know, people that are looking for money for their new startup and their idea. Entrepreneurs by nature are problem solvers. You know, they see opportunity, they see issues, they see the world needs to do something different, or they see something the world needs and they go take it upon themselves to try and build it and build the team around them to make that happen for people. And so I don't see that spirit changing really at all. I see it on high octane, and I love the position that I'm in, being able to see so many people and how they view the world and what their experiences are and how they want to make things better for people. And so I feel so fortunate in this era where there are, you know, I know people who are hurting and this is a hard time for them. I get to be around optimism and enthusiasm all the time, and it's uplifting for me to wake up every day and be around that energy.
And what should entrepreneurs do a little bit differently these days?
You know, I think every entrepreneur is evaluating their team and how their team gets put together and works. Certainly, we're all getting to know each other on a little more human level. You know, I have 3 children, and oftentimes they're in the background of my Zoom calls and Zoom meetings, and, you know, inherently they're all under 7. They disrupt every once in a while, and that human element. But I think about entrepreneurs and how they build their team and how they allow for that flexibility of how everyone's navigating their own lives these days, whatever that means for them. But for entrepreneurs specifically building teams, are they going to bring on more remote workers? Are they going to expand their pool of candidates, of people that are going to be on their journey with them, to all around the country or world because of the virtual environment we're now oftentimes working in? Are they going to bring people more in-house and have some of that more human interaction? And each are making their own choices there. But I think this really has entrepreneurs evaluating how their teams get compiled and go to work every day.
And you talked earlier about obviously entrepreneurs. Let me talk to you about obviously your founding initiative, obviously the Harbor Entrepreneur Center in West Ashley. Terry Griffiths of the Charleston Regional Business Journal wrote this quote: "Founder John Osborne previously served on the West Ashley Revitalization Committee and was drawn to the long-term vision and activity of the Epic Center, which is currently known as Citadel Mall. The space aligned with the Harbor's previous locations in Park Circle, Upper King Street, and Pacific Box and Crate, are all upcoming spaces that were at one point underutilized." John, let me ask you, what activity do you hope the Harbor Entrepreneurial Center will bring to the Epic Center?
Well, I really think I so appreciate the vision of the Epic Center, having sat on the West Ashley Revitalization Commission and seeing the mayor's efforts there and the council's efforts in order to make West Ashley even better. I mean, it's already a great piece of our community, but to see what else it can do. The vision for the Epic Center really is taking that idle, underutilized asset, if you will, and turning it into something that can be really special in our community. And that's largely what I see the Harbor contributing to, is maybe putting a focal point on an underutilized asset and help shape that vision. Certainly, there's a statistic in the last commission meeting about the number of home-based business licenses that were applied for in West Ashley. If we can give those individuals that are working out of their homes a lot of time a neutral, central meeting place to collide, that is the Harbor's mission, to create collision among entrepreneurs. So if we can get them introduced to one another through programs that the Harbor's offering, and then they're going to be better at building their businesses. They're going to expand their network, and those are the types of activities the Harbor has been really good at in every location that it's had, and we see that continuing in the West Ashley location.
And what are the new programs that will be offered by the Harbor Entrepreneur Center?
So programmatically, the Harbor still offers the Accelerator program, which we anticipate bringing back in 21. The JRS Code School, which is the online code or the in-person coding school. Really powerful initiative there to help not only people who want to develop that skill set for either their own entrepreneur activities, but also supporting the needs of the tech sector here that is growing so rapidly and producing more people that have a baseline skill set of how to write code. Our Forum initiative will continue. Forum is for CEOs that are ongoing and existing businesses that want to connect with other CEOs and knowledge share about their journey, and is a really, really powerful format of how we connect people and extrapolate their experiences to be able to share with other entrepreneurs, because sometimes that feels like a lonely journey, and when you are facing some of these decisions, when you can have peers that you can lean on to help troubleshoot or that may have already faced that decision, it can be profoundly helpful. So the Harbor is going to continue all of our programmatic efforts there, along with co-working and meeting space in that location.
And what skill sets do you want to develop in 2021?
It's a provocative question. I'm certainly, with the amount of transaction experience I have now in all of these investments at this point, between angel partners and good growth, I think I'm pushing 60 portfolio companies invested in, and I think understanding how those investments play out is something I still want to develop. And also, it's still a people business. And, you know, I think about some of the conversations I've been having even this week, hard conversations, uncomfortable conversations with founders of companies that we've invested in, and being able to be empathetic and be a resource and be helpful, I think are all things that I want to focus on in 21.
That is so amazing. Well, the Honorable John Osborne, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome anytime.